All right, my babies, who's ready for this video? Excitement, 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 excitement. All right, today's note, or this video's note. A raging fire gives you anxiety, but a calm fire gives you peace and clarity. Again, this random dude, what's he on about? Well, we have a thing in maybe story time. Why the fuck not? Long, long time ago, Mukashi Mukashi. Aruhi o Tokoda. Never mind. Uh, a while back in Africa, I was like hanging out with a couple of friends of mine, and they were like telling me they were South Africans. So they were telling me about the braai. The braai is what they call a barbecue. It's like the whole gathering thing. And the guy sat with me, and for like an hour and a half, they were just explaining to me how beautiful and how strong fire is, and how it has the power to kind of like bring us all together. Which I don't know. It reminded me of things that I read at one point. Because the essence of our mental and evolution is basically fire. And let me explain why. Because the brain, it consumes basically fat, requires fat, water, and sugar in order to function properly. A lot of other minerals as well, but the entirety of its kind of like build is based on these three things. And when you eat something raw, especially like meat and vegetables, you kind of like are, it's harder on the stomach to digest. Now, the entire, I don't know the percentages properly, but I know between the brain and between the stomach, it's about 60% of the body's energy. That's why after we eat, we kind of like feel exhausted or we feel like we need to sleep because most of the energy is going towards the stomach to digest. And that's why after we're focusing for a long time, the minute we raise our heads, like, and I know from the computer or from when I'm like doing something intense, and you see that when you see people that, okay, so chess masters, there was a research that was done, like these guys basically are super skinny, but like all they do is sit all day and play chess. And when they kind of like tested them out, they noticed that sometimes when they're playing like chess, they're sweating. They're sweating as if why? Because their brain is kind of like running that marathon, this, and consuming energy like crazy. So fire, basically, when we discovered fire or when we discovered what we can do with fire, what happened was we basically started cooking. And when it comes to our meats, we are able to start like taking expo- extort fuck man, why is my English so bad these days? We started basically extracting fat much smoother. So something that we would digest maybe like 6 7 hours would take us like two after it's properly cooked, or at the very least it's cooked. And with that allowed us a lot more time in the day to have energy going up to our mind instead of to our digestive system. So it makes sense. And I was reading about the theory behind it and how as we evolved. I don't know if it's Sapiens, the book that I read, that kind of like brought it up. But man, anyways, it makes sense. Everyone that kind of starts thinking about how we process food and how we feel after food would realize that like if you eat something light, you're a lot fresher. If you eat something heavy, you need a nap. So you need a nap because you don't have enough energy going anywhere else. But the same fire throughout the years, we're able to kind of like, if we look at the fire and we're sitting next to it, and we have a thing here in Lebanon, and I'm sure like the campsites overall, camping in general, it's just people hanging out, staring at the fire, maybe having a conversation, but staring at the fire. There's a soothing element to it. The crackles, the sounds, the wood, the kind of like how it rises when it actually catches all the wood and how it slows down. The blue flames that kind of like come every once in a while and all that cute stuff that happens around fire. We normally are mesmerized by it. We stare. Anna, for me, I know like I can actually like sit and look at the fire for like quite a long time, like maybe hours even. Completely chilling, completely immersed, completely just, it feels like it's clearing my mind. It feels like it's burning everything that kind of like is useless and all that good stuff. On the other hand, the same fire that that helped us evolve. The same fire that calms us down, because like for thousands and thousands of years we have been literally like staring at fire and using fire to cook with it. So like it's one of those, like we have evolved to develop some sort of familiarity with certain things. And the same with like how like our eyes kind of like when we're walking kind of go left and right, and when we're doing that, the brain kind of starts filtering stuff from the mind. That's why when you're feeling like overwhelmed, like take a walk, you'll calm down. It's a scientific thing. Like that's your brain literally calms down. The same fire, man, if left kind of like unattended, if left to rage, will basically destroy forests and kind of like just burn anything in its fucking path, man. It is utterly fascinating. And I really think what was happening with me when I was thinking about it was maybe like a little episode where I was kind of like overthinking, not overthinking, more like underdoing. Like one of the days that I don't feel productive, kind of rush to my head instead of kind of exude outside. And again, I don't necessarily believe there's a level of productivity. We tend to kind of like have to understand how we're interacting with ourselves, and we establish how we are able to be how we're able to be productive by producing. And we kind of like, we could take the rate of what we're producing now versus what we used to produce before, and then measure that and like kind of create a certain like formula for the productivity that we have, and then work towards incrementing on it every single day and kind of like increasing the level maybe, or the efficiency or the effectiveness, or just the purity or the like the wholeness of it. I don't know, man. Just everyone kind of like builds their own formula. These days kind of run to my head, and what happens is it feels like all my thoughts kind of rampaging around. But then the days where I'm actually like, okay, every single thought becomes like pure bliss, regardless of what it is, even if it's an ugly one. Because like, ugly thoughts come in all shapes and sizes. Let's just use the term not pretty thought. And what happens is it kind of like, even that one, you're able to engage with it, you're able to like give and take, and you're able to like allow the process of the thought passing through your mind to pass fully, for you to make the decisions you want to make towards it, and kind of like build the confidence you have towards those decisions and towards this engagement that allows it to kind of like just like go on her way. Fuck off. They're gonna come from everywhere. They're gonna come. They happen randomly, but the goal is for us to kind of be able to have one of those like calm fires in our mind, that when the time comes you can cook on it, or you can warm yourself around it, instead of having like a raging fire that requires like literally like water and all sorts of like different kind of shit, right? Like all these people. Although recently I read about like a certain like a principle when it comes to like fire and gases and like the enclosed areas, that if you actually push air out, the fire will eat itself out because it requires air from the outside to whatever. But anyways, so when it comes to at least like to how I see my mind operating, I realize that on the calmer days, my thoughts are they still burn. The good ones and the bad ones, because the good ones get you excited. The bad ones kind of like make you anxious. But both of them are the same emotion. It's the same feeling triggered. Actually, both of them are the same feeling, but they trigger different emotions. Both of them are the same emotion triggering different feelings. Yes. So the feeling of anxiety and the feeling of what's it called, of like excitement, are both kind of like the same emotion, because I don't know, it's like if you have a test the next day, you're anxious. But if you're going camping the next day, you're excited. Both days you can't sleep. Your heart is pounding. It's the same hormone that's being secreted. So it's just like the concept of how they interact with each other, with you involved, and how throughout your mind is literally not your mind, like everything is mind. How they just pass, and you're basically, your consciousness is deciding whether it wants to engage with them and if it wants to engage with them, how, or whether they want to engage with you and they're approaching directly. Just made me think about how, like, symbolically, they kind of like work from a fire's perspective. Because the same fire that destroys the world is the same fire that allowed the world to be built. It's the same fire that melts steel in order for us to have buildings, and the same fire basically burns the building to the ground. It is fascinating how, when you actually have the intention behind the actions that you do, you always seem to be more prepared to use the fire any way you want. And specifically when it comes to your own mind, to use the thoughts that exist in it any way you want and process them. Just kind of like utilize them in order to build on your experience, on your skills, on your approach. To allow these small things that come and go sometimes, and sometimes just mess with you, to be the reason why you are more than you were before, instead of the reason why you kind of like don't want to do anything anymore. It's a video.